Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria has voted to retain the monetary policy rate at 27.5% following its 300 meeting, policy committee meeting, which held in Abuja. This was disclosed by the Apex Bank's governor, Mr. Olayemi Cardoso, during the post-MPC press briefing on Tuesday. All 12 members voted unanimously to maintain current policy rates that the CBN stated. Now, the decision demonstrates the committee's cautious approach to monetary management as it continues to assess prevailing macroeconomic conditions and the effectiveness of recent tightening measures. CBN highlighted the recent moderation in Nigeria's inflation rate, which eased to 23.7% in April from 24.23% in March, according to the latest data from the National Bureau of Statistics. Well, let's talk to the Director of Monetary Policy at the department, that's Monetary Policy Department at the Central Bank of Nigeria. He's Dr. Victor Obo. He joins me live from our Abuja studios. Dr. Obo, it's good to have you on the show this afternoon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tolu, and good afternoon, Nigerians.
Yes, it's good to have you, because I will start with my first question, which is major central banks around the world have commenced their cycle of cutting rates. Now, let me ask, what's the rationale for the CBN holding all its parameters in Nigeria?
Thank you very much, Tolu, and good afternoon once again.
Good afternoon.
As you rightly noted, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria retained all the rates at its 300 meeting of the MPC. These decisions were arrived at after a careful examination of the data and emerging developments, both at the global and domestic level. And the decision was hinged on key considerations. The first consideration has to do with the fact that the previous rate hikes have proven to be largely effective, and that effectiveness can be measured in terms of the gradual moderation we have recorded in inflation. Not only that, we have recorded a stable foreign exchange market or rate, which is also helpful because of the inflation pass-through from that angle. We have also seen a number of positive developments from the fiscal sector. The price of PMS has declined interestingly. Food inflation, which reflects the prices of food items, has also come down, So all this gives comfort to the MPC. And because of that, they felt it is important to hold rate. The other point is that the previous number of rate hikes need time to permeate through the economy because of the lag in transmission to the real sector. So the MPC thought it wise to allow those lags to permeate so that the effect of the previous hike can crystallize and result in a moderation in inflation. The other consideration has to do with the emerging shocks from the global side. And that largely relates to the U.S. trade war with its trading partners. Even though Nigeria is not largely affected directly, whether you like it or not, the ripple effect of that war will have effects on Nigeria. Right now, we have seen the fluctuation in the price of crude oil, which is a major export earner to the Nigerian government, and that could affect the fiscal revenue. So it is important to maintain a cautious approach to ensure that those impacts of the trade war does not affect us adversely. So in such an uncertain policy environment, what is important is for policy managers to take a cautious approach so that we understand the clear direction of global policy, so that we are not caught in the web. So it is important to observe that development for a good period, so that we understand the direction. So these are the major considerations that underlie the decisions of the MPC to retain all the rates.
Interestingly now, but what's prompting the MPC's confidence, of course, on inflation's outlook at this time?
Before I answer that, you also ask why, in the midst of major central banks cutting rates, that we had to retain rates. I want to say that the analysis that MPC does is situation specific. Analysis and decisions have to be taken within the context of each specific economy. So when we're analyzing our data, we don't use US data. We use part of the data as long as it has to do with global development. But the big chunk of data that we use relates to development within the domestic economy. Even at that, those major central banks, for instance, the Federal Reserve, which is the Fed of the US, their last decision was to hold rate. And the chair, said that was done because of the uncertain and unclear policy environment in the globe, across the globe. Now the European Central Bank did a cut. The same thing to Bank of England and one or two central banks in Africa. Now, if you look at the cut across those major central banks, it was very, very marginal. And it was hinged on a deteriorating growth development. Their large GDP numbers were largely very weak. And that was what they had to do to support growth. So the context within which they did was different. And also, their cut was marginal. Okay, come to think of Ghana. Ghana recorded a moderation in inflation, but the committee in Ghana raised rates by 100 basis points. That is to show us that we are following our own data, and so decisions are data-driven and country-specific. Thank you.
Interesting.
Can you remind me of the next question?
Yes, I took you up on immediately after that. I asked you that what is prompting the MPC's confidence with regards to inflation outlook?
Thank you. MPC is optimistic that inflation in the near term will continue to moderate. We have already seen the positive impact of our previous hikes, which is helping to moderate inflation. Particularly, the moderation from March to April is interesting. Now, look at the drivers of inflation. One of the key drivers of headline inflation is the one from food. But if you watch the data carefully, you will understand that from January up to April, food inflation has been on a consistent journey of decline, which shows that if that continues, it will actually put some positive impact on headline inflation. That is one. Another major shock that has led to increase in inflation is the price of PMS. And we can see the moderation in the price of PMS. It's another area that have given us serious hope that inflation is on the decline. The stability of the foreign exchange rate is also helpful because once you're able to get your exchange rate stable, it goes a long way to moderate inflation. We are also aware of the various programs that government, the fiscal authority is implementing, particularly in terms of support to farmers And we know that with the outcome of this, and as rainy season sets in, definitely the aspect of food inflation will continue to moderate. We have also, despite some, shocks, security shocks here and there, on a general note, the military has done a great job, and we have seen some form of, moderation in insecurity incidents, especially in farming communities. All this added up to give the committee some respite that inflation is on a downward journey.
Governor Cardoso says the Naira is now very competitive. I'm going to ask you that question. What does this mean for our economy and our businesses?
Thank you very much. A competitive currency simply means that that currency is appropriately priced, is appropriately valued. The value of the currency is appropriate. It is not too overvalued, neither is it too undervalued. That talks about the competitiveness of the currency. What the governor is saying is that the Naira now is appropriately valued. And that has serious advantage. If your currency is appropriately valued and is not overvalued, the major advantage that has is that it makes your exports, cheap. And because your exports are cheap, it is competitive. Your exports are able to compete with your peer countries and similar products elsewhere. Why? Because it is cheaper to use $1 now to buy those goods in Nigeria. So that attracts investors to Nigeria. And if it makes our exports attractive, what that means is that it will increase revenue, it will create jobs, and incidentally, it will promote growth. So with the flexible exchange rate that has been, implemented by the bank and the commitment of Governor Cardoso-led, management to continue to implement those reforms in the exchange rate market, we can see that the exchange rate is stable. And that flexible exchange rate shows the actual value of the Naira. So in all, it helps to promote growth.
All right, then. Let's take a break now. President Bola Tinubu has arrived at the National Summit for the All Progressive Congress in the banquet hall of the Villa. And we'll continue our Business Nigeria program and our conversation on all other platforms. Stay with us. All right, thank you so much for staying with us. I still have Dr. Victor Obo there, who's been speaking to me around the outcome of the MPC meeting for the month of May. Now, could you speak on the CBN's outlook for global trade and, of course, its fight to tame inflation?
Thank you very much. CBN is doing a lot within its statutory responsibility to promote trade as much as it relates to the payment aspect of trade. That is meant that as an enabler to the fiscal authority, we want to simplify everything and remove any bottleneck that is associated with payment. As you know, payment is central to the promotion of trade. So the CBN is doing a lot to ensure that trade facilitation takes on smoothly, particularly with AFCFTA, which is the big elephant in the room now. The CBN has done a lot. The most recent, circular from the CBN, which was meant to encourage trade facilitation and trade transactions, especially for SMEs, is monumental in this direction. You will agree with me that just recently, the CBN issued a circular allowing, MSMEs to transact, businesses through the PAPS. The PAPS is a Pan-African payment system. And what that means is that you'll be able to transact business, import and export across Africa without using a third-party payment infrastructure. So our new infrastructure is PAPS. And one of the bottlenecks to the use of that has been the difficult documentation process. The CBN, in its circular recently, has to simplify that and mandated or direct banks that all transactions for individual businesses below 2,000 should now only depend on KYC, the basic KYC requirement. And then for corporates, up to below $5,000 per month, now they can just use the basic KYC too. And also just use AML requirements, that is anti-money laundering requirements too. So what I'm trying to say is that the CBN is doing a lot to promote trade, because we know that trade facilitation and promotion is helpful to us. When people trade and we export, we're able to earn FX, and then we're able to build our reserve. And then the pressure on the CBN for FX will drastically reduce. And if that happens, it puts a smile on inflation. That is a link. Because if our FX is stable, it now means that there will be less pressure on foreign exchange markets. And for that reason, it will also be helpful to moderate inflation.
So as we look ahead to the next meeting, which is in July, according to the governor, what would we be looking at? What should be on the front burner ahead of that meeting?
Thank you very much. Mr. Governor Olayemi Cardoso has made it abundantly clear that he is ready, him and his team are ready to stay the course to ensure that the fight against inflation is done headlong. He has reverted to orthodox monetary policy, where all efforts are geared towards bringing down inflation. Inflation, low and stable inflation, as we all know, is a win-win for everybody. It's good for Nigerians, it's good for businesses, it's good for the household, it's good for government. So he has continued to stay the course. Now going to the July meeting, the governor and his team rely so much on data. And that is why every decision that is taken is data-driven. So as we watch the unfolding development in the domestic economy as well as the global economy, data analysis will guide the next decision of the committee. But I assure you that their focus is to ensure that inflation is moderated to a reasonable level.
Dr. Victor Obo, Director of Monetary Policy Department at the Central Bank of Nigeria, thank you so much for your insights into the outcome of the May MPC meeting. We appreciate this.
Thank you, and it's my pleasure to be here.
All right, then.